Zuko's own father burned half his face off, punishment for caring too much. Now imagine that same boy waking up on the very morning it happened, back in the room where his life broke, his father's voice alive again just down the hall. Except this time, he remembers everything that's coming. The whole 100-year war, start to finish, already lived, already lost, already won. So in the next 10 seconds, what does he do? Kneel and take the scar all over again? Or burn his father's throne down before breakfast? It gets bigger than one duel, though. What happens to a century-long war when the disgraced prince already knows every move before it's made? And if he ends it years ahead of schedule, does the Avatar we know ever even get to exist? This isn't a story about Zuko fixing everything. The timeline fights back, and it fights hard. His single most important choice is the very first one. But to understand why he makes it, you have to see the exact moment that broke him. What actually happened in that room? 97 AG Zuko is 13, sitting in a war meeting he was ordered to stay silent in, when a general named Bujing pitches his plan. Throw the 41st Division, a whole unit of fresh recruits, into the field as bait. What better to use as bait than fresh meat? Zuko can't sit there and let it happen, so he speaks up to defend them. The trouble is that disrespecting the plan means disrespecting the Fire Lord himself. So Ozai demands an Agni Kai, a fire duel for honor. Zuko turns to face the general and finds his own father standing there instead. He kneels, he begs, and Ozai answers with one of the coldest lines in the series. "You will learn respect, and suffering will be your teacher." Then he burns half his son's face off and banishes him, with one condition for return: capture an avatar who's been gone for 100 years. A father challenged his 13-year-old to a duel for having a conscience. Father of the Year, Fire Nation Chapter. The lesson Ozai meant to teach was simple. Compassion is weakness. But everyone forgets one thing. Zuko carries the blood of Avatar Roku, the man whose friendship with Sozin once held the world together and whose betrayal began this entire war. Remember that name. Every road of Zuko's life runs back to this one room. So what happens when the boy kneeling on that floor has already lived all of it? The first real question isn't even what he'll do, it's how he's here at all. And that answer is stranger than you'd think. Start at the end. Decades from now, an old man lies on a quiet bed. This is Fire Lord Zuko at the close of a long life. His nation healed, his family grown around him, dying with the calm of someone who finished what he set out to do. The only thing he still carries is one regret, so old and so heavy he's never once said it out loud. He closes his eyes and opens them 80 years in the past. In the body of a 13-year-old, his hand flies to his face and feels smooth, unscarred skin. The mark that defined his whole life hasn't happened yet. He's back, and there's work to do. How is any of this possible? Honestly, the spirits never explain themselves, and canon only ever lets the Avatar return with his memory. So this is the one liberty the story takes, and there's a logic under it. Zuko carries Roku's bloodline, the one line tied straight to the spirit cycle, and a regret heavy enough can bend that cycle. A soul too weighed down to pass cleanly through death's gate gets pulled back, all the way to the hinge of its own life. Take it, because the real question was never how he came back. It's what he does now that he's here. So Zuko speed ran his entire life, hit 100, and woke up holding a New Game Plus save file. Most overpowered tea drinker in history. Waking up with the memories turns out to be the easy part. Using them without shattering everything is where it gets hard, because he didn't just come back with a head full of regrets. He came back with an arsenal. So what's actually in that arsenal? Start with the deadliest secret in the Fire Nation. Ozai didn't inherit the throne. He stole it, poisoning his own father Azulon through a deal with Zuko's mother Ursa. That single fact is a blade that can take the crown legally without firing a shot. Then there's the threat map. Zuko knows Zhao will one day try to murder the moon itself. He knows Azula takes Ba Sing Se by turning the Dai Li. He knows where every catastrophe in this war is buried, years before anyone picks up a shovel. He also knows the dragons, Ran and Shaw, are still alive, and that fire is life, not rage. That detail is a cheat code. In the original timeline, Zuko's firebending ran on anger, so the moment he stopped hating, back in Book 3, his fire actually got weaker and he had to relearn it from the dragons. This Zuko learns the truth first, at peace, with no rage to lose. His fire is steadier at 13 than it ever was at 16. He knows his own ceiling too. Across every version of his life, Zuko could redirect lightning but never generate it, because there was always too much war inside him. Hold on to that one. Memory has a catch though. It's a map of where everyone used to be, not where they are right now. And the instant he changes one move, the map starts to lie, which leaves the deadliest weapon of all, the calendar. Zuko knows the exact dates of the eclipse and Sozin's comet, the 2 days the entire war turns on. He doesn't just know the enemy, he knows the schedule, none of which matters if he fumbles the very first move, the one about to happen 10 seconds from now on that war room floor. So here he is, back on that floor, 13 years old, his heart hammering while 80 years of memory scream at him to do something. This is where you'd expect the obvious play. He's smart now. He knows what's coming, so he stays quiet, swallows the objection, and walks out untouched. Right? Wrong. Because when Zuko runs the math is brutal. Stay silent and two things happen. The 41st Division still gets thrown away as bait, and those soldiers still die. Worse, he stays exactly where he started. A powerless prince trapped under his father's roof with no reason on earth to leave, sitting on 80 years of knowledge and nowhere to spend it. Try to dodge the scar some clever way, and it collapses for a different reason. No outburst, no Agni Kai. No Agni Kai, no banishment. And without the banishment, there's no ship, no freedom, no Iroh to himself, and no 3-year head start before the Avatar wakes up. That's the realization that flips everything. The banishment was never the punishment. It was the only door out of the palace. So Zuko does the one thing no version of himself and no time traveler in their right mind would ever choose. He speaks out on purpose. He takes the scar on purpose. He picks his own fall and wears it like a disguise. And the part that takes real nerve, he recreates the moment exactly. The same words, the same kneel, the same refusal to fight, because the timeline has to look untouched. One flicker of something different in his son, and Ozai, the most paranoid man alive, starts asking questions Zuko can't afford. So he doesn't just take the scar, he performs the boy who earned it. Picture choosing that. Half your face burned off on purpose by your own father for the second time. The therapy bills in this universe are unimaginable, and nobody warns you about a wound you can see coming. It hurts worse. The body forgets pain. The soul doesn't. He remembers every second of it, and he kneels into it anyway. Everyone in that arena thinks they just watched a disgraced prince get exiled to chase a ghost. What they actually watched was the smartest opening move in the entire war. And his first recruit? The one man alive who would actually believe him. Picture the scene. Your scarred, banished nephew sits you down and calmly explains that he's a time-displaced soul carrying the memory of a war that hasn't happened yet. Most people would call a healer. Iroh pours the tea and says, "Tell me everything." Beat. Absolute legend. Zuko doesn't waste time arguing though. Rather than asking Iroh to trust him, he predicts the exact hour a storm will hit, the crewman who'll lose his nerve, the words the man will shout when he does. It all happens, right on cue, and Iroh stops doubting on the spot. Then, shaken, Iroh says the line he'll one day be famous for. Destiny is a funny thing. It never happens the way you expect. It lands hard, because Zuko is the one person alive who knows exactly how it happens. What Zuko can't say is the heavier thing. Iroh is still raw from losing Lu Ten, and Zuko knows that this exact grief is what will eventually turn a retired general into the wisest man alive. The years of wandering, the journey into the spirit world, the White Lotus itself, all of it grows out of this one loss. Some pain you're not allowed to spoil, so he says nothing, lets Iroh in, and just like that, the White Lotus is on the board 2 years early. But Iroh was the easy part. The 3 years that came next were the ones that, played wrong, would cost 20,000 lives. 20,000 lives. That's the stake. And where most people would come out swinging, Zuko does the opposite. He has 3 years before Aang wakes up, and he spends them like a man who's done all this before. First, he quietly saves the 41st Division, the exact soldiers his outburst couldn't protect the first time around. The lives that set this whole story in motion get saved off-screen, before the war even heats up. Second, he fixes his firebending. Iroh takes him to the dragons early, so by the time anyone's paying attention, this banished teenager is already a master, steadier and more centered than the broken 16-year-old of the original timeline ever managed to become. Third, and this is the clever part, he never sabotages Ozai with explosions. He does it with information. He hands the White Lotus a list only a man from the future could write. The supply convoys worth intercepting, the colonial governors quietly skimming gold, the unstoppable new weapons that turn out to be pure bluff. Nobody attacks the war machine. It simply stops working, and no one can figure out why. You can't reshape a prince this drastically without someone noticing though, and that someone is Azula. 14 years old, paranoid, frighteningly sharp, She watches her failure of a brother turn calm and capable and kind. And she can't name what's different, she just knows this isn't the brother she grew up tormenting, so she starts watching. What Zuko refuses to do is move on Ozai. A 13-year-old accusing the Fire Lord of murdering his own father just quietly vanishes. And the secret only works once. So he waits. And waiting, when you already know what's coming, is its own special kind of torture. Then comes his first real target. Not the Avatar, not Ozai, but a man whose ego is about to nearly murder the moon itself. Quick thing before that though, Zuko's about to do what the entire Fire Nation Navy never could. So if you'd rather Admiral Zhao not show up at your door next, do him a favor and hit subscribe. It's free. Zhao would have adored the attention. In the original timeline, Admiral Zhao does something close to insane. He raids Wan Shutong's library, discovers that the moon spirit, Tui, lives in the mortal world as a single white koi fish, and kills it during the Siege of the North. In one stroke, every waterbender on Earth loses their power, and the only thing that reverses it is Princess Yue trading her own life to bring the moon back. Zuko knows all of this, and he knows precisely where it begins, that library. So rather than fighting Zhao, he uses him. He feeds the White Lotus the one lead Zhao's ego could never resist, then lets the Admiral march himself into an ambush far from the north, where he's exposed as a man hunting a spirit just to kill it. The one act even Fire Nation Command won't defend. Zhao is disgraced and gone before he's anywhere near the Northern Water Tribe. With that, the Siege of the North never happens, and the moon lives. But here comes the first real cost. In canon, Yue dies and becomes the moon spirit, living on forever as the moon itself. Save the moon early, and that transformation never comes. Yue simply stays a princess in an arranged marriage, alive, but smaller. It's clean and surgical, exactly how he drew it up, which is exactly why the next move nearly breaks him. The next person he needs can't be outmaneuvered. He has to be trusted. Winter 99 AG. The 12-year-old Avatar breaks out of his iceberg near the Southern Water Tribe, exactly where and exactly when Zuko's memory says he will. This time, though, Zuko isn't there to capture him. He's there with an open hand. And this is so much bigger than strategy. Aang is the reincarnation of Avatar Roku, who happened to be Zuko's own great-grandfather. So what's really happening is Roku's bloodline reaching across 100 years to find his own next life, rebuilding the exact friendship Roku and Sozin threw away. The one bond that, had it held, could have strangled this war before Sozin ever started it. Picture it from the outside, though, and it looks completely insane. A grieving kid who just learned his entire people were wiped out, greeted by a scarred Fire Nation prince claiming to know the future. Katara and Sokka trust him even less than Aang does, so Zuko doesn't ask anyone to trust him. He earns it, telling them to the day that a Fire Nation fleet will burn a specific harbor town. When the smoke rises on exactly that date, Sokka finally stops calling him a liar. From Aang's side, the whole thing is unhinged. A grumpy fire teenager rolls up and goes, "Hi, I'm your sworn enemy. I'm also from the future, and we're best friends eventually." Beat. Sokka's trust meter did not move, but the entire plan rests on one buried assumption, that everyone else stays exactly as predictable as his memory says. One person won't, and she happens to be the single most dangerous mind in the Fire Nation. The person who breaks it is Azula. In Zuko's memory, her Ba Sing Se Ku is flawless. Mai and Ty Lee slip in disguised as Kyoshi warriors. The Dai Li get flipped, the city falls, and Aang is struck down in the middle of the Avatar state. But Azula already clocked that her brother changed, so she changes too. She moves earlier than he remembers or later, and his flawless notes dissolve into static. For the first time, he's improvising against someone smarter than his own memory. He still wins, but only barely. Zuko, Iroh, the White Lotus, and Aang's group hold the city together. The cost is the one thing he'd protected for years, his cover. The second he moves against Azula in the open, Ozai learns that his banished son is a traitor working with the Avatar, and the secret war turns into an open one, 2 full years ahead of schedule. There's a quieter cost too. Without Azula's lightning, Aang's Avatar state is never locked. But it's also never cracked open under that kind of pressure the way canon forced it. He walks away safe and unfinished. Really sit with what that means. Azula has zero memory of the future, and she still nearly outplays the one person who has all of it. Built different, terrifyingly so, which leaves the 2 hardest things Zuko will ever face. Not an army, not a comet, but his sister and his father in that order. And the first one has no clean answer. Start with his sister, because 80 years of memory taught Zuko exactly how Azula breaks. It isn't in battle, and it isn't from any single blow. It's a sequence. First, their father abandons her. He crowns himself Phoenix King and leaves her behind with a hollow, meaningless title. Then the only two people who ever truly loved her, Mai and Ty Lee, turn against her. Abandonment, and then betrayal. That combination is what finally shatters the perfect princess. Knowing the sequence changes the whole approach to saving her. The lever was never a duel, or a stronger fire blast, or a clever trap. It's keeping Mai and Ty Lee at her side, protecting the one bond that might have held her together, long before Ozai hollows her out and that betrayal becomes unavoidable. So does he try? He does. But this is the one rescue all the foreknowledge in the world can't guarantee, because you cannot script a wound that deep into healing. Maybe he buys her a few more years of sanity. Maybe the paranoia just finds another way in. The plan that rewrote an entire war turns out to be useless against a single sister. And that, not Ozai and not the comet, is the first wall his calendar ever hits. Whatever happens with Azula, none of it changes what's coming. The comet doesn't care how anyone feels. It's celestial, and it's almost here. Sazen's comet arrives right on schedule, because the one thing Zuko can't reschedule is the sky. Ozai's plan hasn't changed. Ride the comet's power, the strength of 100 suns, and burn the entire Earth Kingdom to ash as the self-crowned Phoenix King. The difference this time is that he stands almost alone. His admiral's compromised, his daughter possibly turned, and his banished son walking toward him with the Avatar at his side. Now the secret fires. In front of the entire court, Zuko says it out loud. Ozai poisoned his own father, Azulan, to steal the throne. In an instant, the crown-changing hand stops looking like a coup and starts looking like a reckoning. Then comes the payoff the whole story has been building toward. For the first time in any life he's lived, Zuko doesn't redirect lightning. He generates it. Beat. And that single image is the entire arc. Lightning is the cold technique, the one that answers only to a mind with no war inside it, which is why it always belonged to Ozai and Azula and Iroh and never to Zuko. But the war inside him is finally over. The technique that belonged to every monster in his family answers at last to the son who never became one. He doesn't face his father alone either. Descendant and reincarnation stand side by side. Roku's blood and Roku's soul, finally doing the one thing Roku and Sozin never could, choosing each other over the throne, and he's about to win. Completely, and years early. But it's going to cost him something he never once saw coming, something that might cut deeper than the scar. Hold that thought for 60 seconds, because there's a problem nobody planned for. Without Aang's journey to the lion turtle, energy bending may never exist in this world, which hands Zuko the exact question Aang was spared. How do you actually end Ozai? Is there a path that isn't just one more royal murder? Or does the oldest curse in the dynasty simply repeat itself through a cleverer pair of hands? However he ends it, and the scenario deliberately leaves that blade hanging, the war is over, years ahead of schedule. Zuko takes the crown, young and unbroken and victorious. Everything he came back to fix is fixed. And yet there's no celebration, no cheering court, no triumphant music, just a young Fire Lord on a throne that suddenly feels too big, in a hall that suddenly feels too quiet, staring at a war that ended too clean. It's the face of a man who won and feels absolutely nothing. So why does the greatest victory in Fire Nation history feel like a funeral? Start with everyone who's still breathing because of it. Then count what it cost. The 41st Division, 20,000 young recruits who died as bait in the original timeline, go home to their families instead. Jet, who in canon dies pinned beneath Lake Laogai still insisting he's fine, never finds a city to burn or a cause to die for. The Moon Spirit survives, so Yue never has to trade her life to bring it back. And behind all of them sits the quiet arithmetic of 3 full years of war that simply never occur. It's a far longer list than canon ever managed, and every name on it is real. But there's something underneath it that nobody really wants to say out loud. First, the big one. Aang never becomes the Avatar this world actually needed. He survives, but the world was saved by a Fire Nation prince's victory rather than the Avatar's mercy. He skips the trial that forged him and never masters the Avatar state the hard way, so when the next great threat arrives, and in this universe it always arrives, there's a kind, unfinished kid sitting where a fully realized Avatar should be. Zuko may have won this war by quietly losing the next one. Second, the line he never earns. In the original timeline, after everything he goes through, Iroh tells him, "You've restored your own honor." This Zuko never hears that sentence, because in this version it wouldn't be true. He didn't restore his honor, he downloaded it. He's a good Fire Lord who never actually had to become one. Third, the part that echoes Sozin. A throne taken through a secret and a death is still a throne taken through a secret and a death. The only thing separating Zuko's climb from his great-grandfather's is that he didn't make it alone. The Avatar climbed it beside him. That's the whole difference, and it might be the only one. Fourth, Azula, who ends up saved or shattered, and either way carries a scar that never quite sets right. And fifth, everything he could never reach in the first place. Lu Ten, Azulon, his mother's stolen years, the genocide that happened a full century before he woke up. 100 years of grief doesn't dissolve just because one boy came back with a calendar, which brings us back to that old man on the bed and the regret he could never say out loud. This is it. Zuko only became someone worth being by suffering for it, and he could never hand his younger self that gift without quietly stealing everything good the suffering had built. So out of everything his foreknowledge let him erase, every death, every battle, every wrong turn he ever made, there's one thing he refuses to touch: the scar. Think back to what Ozai told him. Compassion is weakness, burned into his son's face as proof. But that scar was never proof of weakness. It was proof that a 13-year-old looked his own father in the eye and chose people over power on the day it cost him everything. Kept his own fall, even as he spared everyone else theirs. It's the single part of himself a perfect plan could never improve. And who knows what this Fire Lord becomes when the next threat finally arrives, the one even he never lived to see. So tell me which Zuko is the real one. The boy who suffered his way into a hero, or the king who skipped the pain to save everyone else? Is a redemption you plan in advance even a redemption at all? Drop it in the comments. Then go see what happens if Azula was born first.